Dr. Nair, if I may come to you, ma'am, and ask you, uh, the new workforce, okay, and I call them the young entrepreneurs, and young is not age. The young means if you are starting on an entrepreneur journey, you're young because that's, I'm basing it on that. Are they equipped for the next critical event if we were to get hit with another one? How are we trying to get them
I
equipped,
don't
ma'am?
think I don't think so. They're not ready. I mean, we are not ready. Um, and if you listen to some of what the other speakers mentioned, right? And we know this is a reality. Increasingly, we are becoming a very globalized workforce, right? Which means that suddenly you are competing with not your classmate to get that next job. You're competing with somebody who may be coming out of IIT in India, for example, right? Because already Google and Twitter and all of that are saying they can hire from anywhere in the world. If you're going to be working remotely, they're not limited geographically to the talent pool that's there. I don't think the talent pool that's coming out today is thinking in those terms. They're probably thinking, how do I get my next job in this location? And I'm competing with that guy from my class, but not from the guy sitting, coming off my IT. That's one. And the other thing that I don't think they're ready for is how, as Asif mentioned, increasingly it's becoming a very modular workforce in the sense that you get what you need from who you need at that point of time. The people who are entering the workforce, or even those of us who are in the workforce, many of us believe that we're going to be having this job security of having an 8 to 5, monthly wages or fortnightly wages, whatever it is. But that's changing. More and more people have to be self-driven. They have to be ready that you may have 10 different projects that you're working on for 10 different people, and that gig is going to be over, say, in the next 3 months, and then it's going to be another gig. I don't think we're preparing our workforce for that scenario. So if you ask me, are we ready? Probably not. And that is really, really scary. And that's something we need to take into account. And then those people who already have the workforce today, as they transition to this new normal and as they realize that, they can actually get work done modularly, and they realize that they can start tapping the global workforce, they also need to think about how they're going to be managing the human resources moving forward, or even reskilling and upskilling their people moving forward for this new normal.
No, absolutely. I cannot agree with you more. And you're right. There are no borders. Luckily at OpenGov, we have no borders from day one. That's how we had set ourselves up because we touch a lot of countries, a lot of governments, a lot of banks in different countries. So we have a workforce literally spread from India all the way across to New Zealand, and anywhere in the middle. But you're right. It is a new way of working now, and people are getting accustomed to it. What Sani is saying over here, and what you're alluding to is the culture. The culture is accepting it, and that's the big transformation that I'm seeing. It's not only the business transformation; it's a culture transformation that we're experiencing right now, which is a big change. Mm-hmm. So, Asif, coming to you, sir, tell me about communication in this dire straits time. How are you guys communicating with your team and with others around? What's the best mode? What are you guys doing?
I think, the overall thing is the new normal, what you're saying is very complex. I don't know what it ultimately will be, but there are various ways which I think we'll just go back and say, in an engineering company, everybody used to be working on 5-6 projects and used to be booking, saying, okay, I will take so many hours for this and so many hours for this and so many hours for this, and I'll finish this by this date and this date, depending on the time schedule and all that. So it was multitasking, multi-projects, and totally you had your time and you were doing it and delivering as it's there. All that was possible when you were in one place. You could know and you can see who's doing what, and you had those appropriate tools. But now, if you look at all the communication and collaboration tools have really become quite good. But they're still not there, but they are pretty good. They're not there because each of those modules are not so well integrated, but they're getting integrated. So like Google and Microsoft and those people, they have this, but and people used it, and but some of them have got the other tools are not that broad in services. So they may have just video conferencing as one thing or a meeting, but they will not be able to share documents and other stuff, record things, and may not be that secure. But I think when this reset button got pressed, the new generation X, Y, Z, which is now coming in, is more adaptive to work communicating through digital means and working that way. But yes, to change the culture will be very difficult, because we live in families and we have a family and we want to be a module. We want to be together and we want to do something, and we and we have our own something or some other. We our kicks are different, and so those kind of things will I don't know how that will factor in, but online services are really very important, and the collaboration tools have to be secure, and they should be able to provide you that kind of security which you need. So whether it's because voice, what you say, what's the expression on your face when you're saying something, all that gets recorded now, and now you'll be conducting business from remote. So how do you share those confidential or sensitive information and things that have to be also available in the same way as we want to talk to people and conduct business. So these communication and collaboration tools we'll see a big change in them and the way companies are going to use them.
Yes.
And
Sorry. No, please.
Yeah, and they have to be very secure and tested and checked by security vendors and everything.
Yes, and you're right. That's the CISO hat of yours that just came back on by saying, yes, where's my security landscape and all my communication with everybody?
Yes.
And you're right. And, and Sonny, the fact that you hire such a diverse workforce, you got them working from their respected homes. It must be a challenge because you know what? When you come into your office, you're isolated. You're with your colleagues and your team members, and you are tasked. Now that people are working from home, and a country like India, where they're big families and there's lots of opinions, right? Everybody in India is a CEO. Yeah, you know that, and I know that, right? I'm an Indian, so I can say that with authority. Okay, so the good part. So how are you tracking their progress? How are you making sure that such a large force is doing what it is supposed to be doing?
So this can be done at two levels. You can do it at a technical level. You can have a liveness check on the device that they are using, whether they have just not switched it off and they're not doing something else. But that is, in my opinion, more of a compliance thing, and we have not really resorted to that. What we have done is, like, we are measuring what is the business output in terms of what they're able to achieve. Like if they are trying to sell a product, what was the level of success, like how many sales could they clinch, or if they are processing some application, or if they're doing some liability center processing work, the number of applications or the number of processes that they could complete is measured. But just in the context of what Asaf and others said before, this sort of change and transformation cannot happen in vacuum. And one welcome thing that has happened is, at least in India, is the regulator, the governments, they are all chipping in. Like earlier, you could not open an account in India unless the customer visits a branch physically. They have done away with that. Today, for onboarding a customer, video KYC is allowed. So if you look at it, the enablers are getting in place. It's not something that we are struggling on our own. And because of this, the whole ecosystem is changing. We are not finding it much of a challenge to actually measure the work our staff are doing. We have not gone on a very legalistic, technical control point of view. We are looking at it more from what a person is achieving. And traditionally, we have worked like that. We don't measure how many hours you sat at your desk and you don't have to submit a timesheet at the end of the day. We are more interested in what you have achieved during a day in terms of business growth and business value that you have created. And that is continuing even in the new system.
Awesome. So it's all output driven, okay, and that's measurable because that's a
Yes.
tangible, measurable, okay, tool as opposed to
Yes.
the compliance side and the policing and the being the big brother, which is not fun actually. Yeah, no, but you're absolutely right, and that's where the motivation is also right because you have a task, you got milestones, and you're hitting those tasks. So it's not so much tick boxing, but it's more progression. Right, Frederick, reflection on the communication and the output.
Yes, Mohit. I think one of the good things coming out of the COVID-19 crisis and the work from home situation is that it forces companies to treat their employees as adults, finally, not checking that they're at 9 o'clock in the office and they don't leave before 5 or 6 p.m. and chipping a card into the machines like in the factories in the times before. It's output driven, exactly as Sunny said, or as I've said, and you, Mohit. We are looking at the outcome of what employee is producing and not the means and how they are doing it. And I think this is a much nicer way to have a professional relationship with people. Now you can go a little bit further. The company has to be caring. And the newer generation also want to work for a company that has a meaning and that really cares about themselves. And even though the sense of loyalty is not what it used to be in the former generations, because people are job hopping and the companies are letting go people as well, maybe a little bit easier. People are still looking for some sense. And in that regard, the companies have a duty of care towards their employees. And that has been exacerbated with COVID-19. And that can be enabled through technology. It is a double-edged sword thing, because notifying people is part of the duty of care. So you can have some systems that say to people, look, there is an emergency in your building, evacuate immediately by SMS or voice calls and etc. Or you have been closed to a cluster of COVID-19. And this is where we saw an application for everything that we are doing, which has been extremely successful. So, you go into the notification, you go into locating the people, and then the next step is tracking and tracing. When this is done in all ethics, and we abide by this motto of "Don't be evil," the Google one initially, it can be very helpful for the employees of a company. And when you say you have the possibility to inform your people, do not go in that area. This is a contaminated area. Or you've been at that time in this area, and unfortunately, it looks like it is also an area where at that time, some people who have been diagnosed positive, so you better get yourself tested. This is very helpful, and people appreciate that. As long as this is an information that respects to privacy and which is given primarily to the individual. If it becomes an instrument of surveillance, of mass surveillance that intrudes into the privacy of people, that becomes extremely dangerous. And we're going into an Orwell-like society, which we do not want. But we've seen some of our customers, and I can give you the example of the Asian Development Bank in the Philippines, in Manila, because this is a public one, where female employees who walk from the office back to home, not now, but usually this is what they do, are very happy to have an emergency button on their mobile phone if they are going away from what we call a safe corridor that they will define themselves. And they have to check in, and if there is a problem, if they don't check in regularly, then this will trigger an alert in the control center of the Asian Development Bank and say, well, we have an employee that might be in trouble, and that triggers immediately some response plans. Of course, we've seen that with COVID-19. We can apply that to COVID-19, but to far more applications. And this can be a very good and very nice use of technology. But again, a double-edged sword. We have to be very, very careful in not flipping into a surveillance society, which is extremely scary.
No, absolutely. And that's the point's well taken, actually, because you're right. There is a very fine line between the two.